Hello and welcome back to Cartoon Mania. Today we're gonna cover the series Rick and Morty from beginning to the end in detail. We'll answer the questions like how did Rick make his portal gun, who is evil Morty, and what in the world is central finite curve. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Rick is the super smart scientist who's always getting into crazy adventures with his grandson/sidekick, Morty. Rick has all this futuristic tech and is constantly pushing the boundaries of science, but he's also kind of a loose cannon. Despite his shortcomings, he's considered the smartest being in the known multiverse. Morty, on the other hand, is more cautious and gets dragged along for the wild ride. Rick was married to a woman named Diane, and together they had a child named Beth. Beth then married a guy named Jerry and had 2 kids with him. The first one was their daughter Summer, and the second one was Rick's sidekick Morty. It is pretty evident from the very start that Rick does not get along well with his family, mostly because he's always insulting Jerry for being mediocre.
Will you at least unfreeze my daughter's idiot?
And secondly, because he always puts the family in danger. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that Rick was absent from Beth's life for a significant portion of her upbringing. This is evident in the episode Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, where the family celebrates the 1-year anniversary of Rick's return. It implies that there was a considerable period of separation between Rick and his family. Initially, Rick's past was mostly unknown until the episode The Rick Shank Redemption, where he is captured by an opposing organization for the crimes he committed during his absence from the family, but more on that later. The show gets a whole lot more complicated when we learn that our original Rick belongs to a dimension called C-137, where he was building a prototype of his portal gun that would allow him to travel anywhere in the universe. However, before he could finish it, he was visited by a Rick from another dimension whom he calls Rick Prime for the remainder of the show. Rick Prime offers Rick C-137 to join an under-construction Rick Alliance, which is a society where Ricks from all across the universe gather and serve in a hierarchy. Interestingly, all of them already have a working module of the portal gun, which he is offered as well. However, Rick C-137 was different. He refused the offer and even decided to give up on science entirely to spend more time with his family. Sadly, this event led to the death of his wife Diane and daughter Beth in the C-137 dimension, which prompted him to make the portal gun himself. Initially, it is shown that he immediately invented the gun and chased after Rick Prime. But as it turns out, in the episode Rick Morai Jack, it took him months to get over this loss and invent the portal gun. Rick C-137 was the most sane and happy man amongst all of the Ricks, but that was about to change, for the best or for the worst depending on who you are. In the same episode, we learned that after the incident with his family, Rick C-137 dedicated months of his life in search of Rick Prime across several dimensions. Soon after killing another Rick, he found the Alliance symbol on the wall and decided to hunt every single Rick that is associated with the Citadel. All this killing consumed him, turning him into this narcissistic prick he has become now. Because he killed several other Ricks, the Alliance sent several Ricks back to kill him. However, once they failed to stop him, he became a godlike figure among his other selves and was ultimately declared the leader of the Alliance. Being the leader, he forged the Citadel but left it behind and crash-landed into the dimension he is currently in, where he reunited with Beth, who is not actually his real daughter. Now, Rick C-137's ultimate goal is to capture and kill Rick Prime to avenge his wife and daughter, but more on that later. Rick's daughter, Beth, appears to be a caring mother and wife at first, but later we learn that she inherits some of her father's disturbing attributes. In the episode The ABCs of Beth, Rick mentions how she used to ask him to make her borderline, if not blatantly psychotic toys and devices to use on the neighbor's kids. So to keep the kids safe, he created this dimension called Fruipyland, where she can play however she wants. However, she once brought her friend Tommy inside and pushed him into a river of honey to kill him. Years later, Tommy is still stuck in the Fruipyland, and his father is going to be sentenced to death on charges of killing him. Seeing this, Beth enters Fruipyland once again and realizes that Tommy had survived her attempt of killing him. And you know what the worst part is? Fruipyland was specifically built to let Beth do all sorts of wild stunts without hurting anyone or herself. Yet she managed to find a way to hurt someone. She asks him to come back home, but Tommy refuses, and the conflict ends in Beth slaughtering everyone, including Tommy. Violence runs in the family, I guess. Anyways, back in Rick's garage, she and Rick make a clone of Tommy and save his father from being executed. However, realizing her true nature, she feels bound to live as a housewife. In a moment of understanding, Rick offers to make a clone of her as well. She can go into space and have all sorts of adventures, while her clone can take care of the family. Initially, she doubts herself, but in the episode Star Mort Return of the Jedi, it is revealed that she did in fact take the offer. What's really messed up is that Rick recalls how he purposely shuffled the real Beth with the clone Beth, most likely because he didn't want to kill the Beth on Earth once the Beth from space returned. Space Beth, after joining an intergalactic force, embarks on numerous missions before eventually returning to Earth. Surprisingly, she even goes on a mission with the rest of the family, leading to a peculiar situation where the two Beths grow closer due to the shared trauma inflicted by Rick. In an unexpected twist, the two Beths develop romantic feelings for each other, causing some traumatizing discomfort from Morty and Summer. Awkward. I mean, falling in love with herself? Guess she took the narcissistic side of Rick too. To make matters worse, Jerry strangely seems to enjoy the attention from both his wife and her clone, creating a rather dysfunctional family dynamic. But despite the odd circumstances, Space Beth becomes more actively involved in the family's adventures. And now let's talk about the Citadel of Ricks for a second. I mentioned earlier that Citadel is a society of numerous Ricks from several dimensions. It is basically a hierarchy where Ricks based on their ranks are assigned their Mortys. Now, you may wonder why that is. You see, Ricks have committed horrible crimes throughout history, which is why they have caught the attention of the Galactic Federation, a body that exists to eradicate all dangers from the universe, including the Citadel of Ricks. To conceal their locations, each Rick has been assigned a Morty because Rick's genius waves are cancelled out by Morty's dumb brain waves, which makes Rick much harder to track. In fact, the sole purpose for the creation of Rick Alliance was to protect Ricks of the multiverse from the Federation. In close Rick counters of the Rick kind, Rick C-137 faces a tough situation as he is accused of killing 27 Ricks. Despite his infamous reputation, he maintains his innocence and denies any involvement. Meanwhile, the Citadel is revealed to be using cruel methods to extract Morty waves from numerous Ricks, protecting their location from the Federation and other rogue Ricks. The plot thickens when Rick C-137 is captured by a Rick who was actually responsible for the murders. This killer Rick scans Rick C-137's brain to uncover his motives, which will be crucial later on. Nevertheless, Rick C-137 manages to escape and exposes the true culprit to the Citadel, only to find out that the killer Rick was being controlled by someone else. The twist comes when the eye patch wearing Morty of the killer Rick destroys the control device, indicating that he was the mastermind behind the killings. This Morty's role will play a significant part in future episodes, so stay tuned. And this is also where Birdperson comes in. Bird belonged to a group of resistance whose planets were taken over by the Federation, making him a prime target. In Rick Ternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort, Rick C-137 on his mission to locate Rick Prime stumbles upon Birdperson, and the two become friends over a common enemy. The two even fought a whole war called the Battle of Blood Ridge, where the Resistance went against the Federation. Rick and Birdperson fought side by side to defeat the Federation and became best friends on the battlefield. However, when Rick showed his respect and asked Birdperson to join him on his adventures, the latter refused, which understandably made him upset. Sometime later, in the episode Rick See Business, Rick and Summer throw a party where Birdperson meets Summer's high school friend Tammy for the first time. The two hook up after the party, and Tammy later appears in the episode Get Swifty in Birdperson's home casually dressed in a robe, implying their relationship has continued. Somewhere along the line, the two fall in love and are set to be married in the episode The Wedding Squanchers. Birdperson invites all of his friends who took part in his adventures, including Rick and his family. However, in an epic twist of events, Tammy reveals to be a deep cover agent for the Galactic Federation, whose entire plan was to gather everyone who supported Birdperson in the war and kill them. The wedding is crashed by the Federation, and sadly, Birdperson is killed in the process, shot several times by Tammy herself. Rick barely escapes with his family, and the whole planet Earth is sort of taken over by the Federation, which is why he has to find a similar planet to keep them safe. They arrive at this Earth-like planet, but the only issue is that it's really small compared to the original Earth. There, Jerry suggests that they rat out Rick for their freedom, making Rick realize that he will always be bringing danger to his family if he stays with them. So in a moment of realization, Rick gives himself up and saves his family. Now, before we proceed, there's something important I need to mention. You see, after the death of Birdperson in the Wedding Squanchers, his body is taken back by Tammy. And later, we see that he has been revived as Phoenix Person, a cyborg who is under the influence of Tammy. In the episode Star-Mort Return of the Jedi, when Space Beth arrives on Earth for the first time, Tammy and Birdperson see her as an enemy and follow her to the planet. Tammy ends up dying in a fight, and Space Beth manages to shut off Birdperson as well. In Returnal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort, we see that Rick has brought the remains of his best friend to his garage and is trying his best to make him break free of the mind control that Tammy had put him in. Eventually, he succeeds and revives Birdperson again, and he also learns that he has a child somewhere in the world and goes to search for her. Now, let's get back to when Rick gave himself up to the Federation. In the episode Rick Shank Redemption, Rick is being held captive by the Federation, who are trying to extract some portal gun's formula from his memories. Meanwhile, everyone except Jerry feels guilty and worries about Rick's safety, which is why Summer and Morty find ways to rescue him. Additionally, the Federation has taken over the world through democracy and has even assigned personal servant robots to everyone. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Rick did not belong to this dimension. He just crash landed in a similar dimension after abandoning the Citadel. However, that dimension is not the one we are currently in. This begs the question, what happened to that dimension and why did Rick change places yet again? For that, let's go to the episode Rick Potion number 9. Morty has a crush on a girl named Jessica, but any of his attempts are thwarted by a guy named Brad. Rick makes him a potion that will make the consumer attracted to Morty, but in a quick turn of events, the whole city now starts making sexual advances toward Morty. Rick creates yet another potion to fix this problem, but he accidentally ends up welcoming a full-ass zombie apocalypse into that world. When the place becomes uninhabitable, Rick grabs Morty and teleports into a dimension that had the exact same past, only with the difference that Rick there had already cured the zombie virus. However, just before they arrive there, the Rick and Morty of that dimension die in an explosion. Our Rick and Morty bury them in the backyard and take their places in the family. This implies that neither Rick nor Morty belongs to this dimension, right? Pretty wild stuff. In fact, in the episode Rick's 3 Minutes, Morty even tells Beth about his past and even points to the graves in the backyard. Now let's go back to how Morty and Summer plan to rescue their grandfather, who is also really not their grandfather. So Summer decides to dig up the original Rick's grave in their timeline to get a hold of the portal gun. But things take a wild turn when a service robot mistakes them for a threat and goes after them. In a crazy twist, Morty ends up using the portal gun and ends up in his original dimension, which is infected by one of Rick's potions. Meanwhile, in that dimension, Beth, Jerry, and Summer have adjusted to their new lives. Jerry, in an attempt to keep Morty from leaving, destroys the portal gun, but this attracts the attention of the Citadel, who freezes everyone except our Summer and Morty. Also, the Citadel is made aware of Rick C-137's capture and sends forces to kill him before he leaks any info. As Rick C-137 makes his escape from the Federation, Morty and Summer are taken in and put on trial for supporting a fugitive. Rick switches bodies with another Rick, uses some fancy control panel, and boom, the whole Citadel gets teleported right into the Federation prison. As Ricks and the Federation go head-to-head in an epic battle, our very own Rick C-137 shows up, wipes out the entire Council of Ricks, and rescues Summer and Morty. But he doesn't stop there. Rick also messes with the Federation's money, driving them straight into bankruptcy. This cunning move allows Rick to successfully dismantle his most formidable adversaries. The Federation can no longer keep its government on Earth and dips, leaving only but chaos behind. Rick arrives with Morty and Summer, and Jerry gives Beth the ultimatum to choose between Rick and him. She chooses her father, of course, and Jerry ends up divorced at the end of it. As it turns out, this whole divorce thing was pre-planned by Rick, who wanted revenge on Jerry for trying to rat him out to the Federation. But worry not, because remember how Beth went to space and left her clone behind? Well, that clone decides to get back with Jerry, and things kind of work out in the end. The divorce, of course, happened before she got herself a clone, so Jerry had no idea until Space Beth returned for the first time. Plus, we have no way to tell which Beth is real, since Rick kinda mixed them up and sent one to space. So, remember when I mentioned an eye-patched Morty who was responsible for the killings of 27 Ricks? Well, it's time to talk about him now. In the Ricklantis mix-up, we learned that the Citadel has started redeveloping and Ricks and Mortys are going around in dimensions to collect funds. After the death of the Council, each Rick has taken a role in the society and life seems pretty normal for once. On the other hand, even though some Mortys have taken important roles, most of them are put in school where they learn how to be a good Morty to the Ricks they will be assigned to. Now let's talk about the election at the Citadel. Ricks are usually the ones competing for power, but this time, a Morty decides to run for president. His chances aren't looking great, and even his own assistant tells him to give up.
Maybe you should find a little faith, young man. You don't pay me to have faith.
During the debate to determine the best candidate, this Morty delivers a heartfelt speech that touches everyone. He talks about the need for change and compassion in an unexpectedly deep monologue, and it's that moment that makes you root for the underdog. You see, due to this hierarchy system, some Ricks are much more privileged than others. While some are enjoying a luxurious life, many are stuck as bus drivers, school teachers, laborers in factories, and other mediocre jobs. Now keep in mind that each Rick is the smartest man in his own universe, and being put to such minor tasks is kind of an insult to their genius. Morty uses this situation to win the election and even fires his assistant after the debate because he didn't believe in him earlier. The assistant is later approached by a corrupt Rick who offers him a huge sum of money to assassinate the president. The attempt fails and we see a bunch of elite class Mortys in a meeting with the president. They all boast how they have been running the Citadel for years and it will continue to work that way no matter who the president is, which prompts Morty to eliminate everyone who shares the same ideology. Many fans call him Evil Morty, but don't let the name fool you. He's not actually evil, just on a mission to change things up at the Citadel. Evil Morty wants to break the chains of Morty's slavery and show Ricks that they're capable of so much more. He's all about equality and giving everyone a fair shot, so he starts by getting rid of anyone who supports the old hierarchy. He's out to create a Citadel that's freer and fairer for everyone. It's a pretty bold move, but Evil Morty believes it's for the greater good. In the end, it is revealed that this Evil Morty is the same eye-patched Morty who was responsible for the killing of those 27 Ricks. His run doesn't stop there though. In fact, he actually ends up stabilizing life on Citadel, but we learn that he had an ulterior motive from the get-go. You see, he invites Rick C-137 and Morty to dinner and injects Morty with memories of Rick he collected in close encounters of the Rick kind, which reveals to him a lot of disturbing facts about the Citadel and all of its infrastructure. Well, we already know how Ricks hide the Citadel, but what you might not know is that the Citadel is making sure Jerry and Beth end up together and have Morty so they can hide their base. Not only that, but waiting for Mortys to be born can be a pain in the ass, so they extract its DNA and make infinite copies of Mortys just to stay hidden. Pretty sickening. So our Morty is visibly upset after learning about Rick's crimes, which is why he gives him a serum of his memories which reveals everything about his past, including the death of his wife and all the killings he did. As they make their escape, they learn that Evil Morty has hacked every single portal gun of Rick's that is presented on the Citadel, and they will be killed every time they use it. This includes our Rick and Morty as well, who are now stuck in the Citadel. They arrive at the core and Evil Morty explains what the central finite curve is. You see, there are a lot of dimensions in which Rick is not the smartest man in the universe, but the reason we never see those dimensions is that the Citadel has created a filter or a barrier of sorts which seals all such dimensions from being traveled to. So, in short, the central finite curve serves as a filter that separates all the universes where Rick is not the smartest man. This is how they ensure that they rule this end of the multiverse without any outside interference. Evil Morty scanned Rick C-137's brain to obtain the location of the curve and is now going to split a hole open in space to go to the other side so he can escape the slavery chain. Before leaving, he floods the whole city with portal fluid, which kills almost the entirety of its population. Luckily, Rick and a few survivors manage to escape in a pod, but without a portal gun, so Rick and Morty are stranded in space. Meaning, Evil Morty escapes to the other side and opens up a yellow portal, which is a door for hundreds of possibilities for any future seasons. So, after getting rescued by Space Beth in the most Avengers Endgame style,
Hey, remember like a second ago when you pretended not to know who Iron Man was?
Rick and Morty arrive at their timeline, but Rick accidentally ends up teleporting every Rick and Morty to their original worlds. Now, as for Rick C-137, we learned that he had created a Robo-Diane to torture himself, and the first thing she asks him if he was able to find her killer. Rick says he is unfindable and heads out, but the Robo-Diane reminds him that the killer Rick is also stuck in his original world, giving Rick a hint on where to find him. Meanwhile, Morty finds out that Beth and Summer died in a zombie-infested world and that his father has now moved on from his previous life. He is of course rescued by Rick, and as it turns out, Rick Prime is the original grandfather of the Morty we see throughout the show. The only reason Rick C-137 came to rescue Morty was that he thought Rick Prime might also have returned to this dimension. Eventually, he located his hideout, but it turned out to be just a trap set by Rick Prime to lure and kill anyone who comes to his chase. So he decides to dip the hideout and rescue both Beth and Summer, who are on a space mission. In the end, the whole gang is back together and they arrive to their Earth only for it to be completely taken over by a monster called Mr. Frundles. Having no choice, the gang moves to an alternate dimension where the whole family just happens to die in an accident. They casually bury themselves in the backyard and start their lives in this new dimension. Now, a lot of things happen in the final season. Morty gets stuck in a video game, Space Beth and Clone Beth hook up, and the gang almost get their consciousness taken over by their night selves. Additionally, Rick becomes extremely overpowered by eating a bunch of fortune cookies, dinosaurs return to Earth and leave, and Morty even becomes the king of the sun. However, surprisingly, the hunt for Rick Prime takes a backseat for a while, as Rick becomes surprisingly more involved with his family. He's there to save them from all sorts of crazy dangers, and the family starts to appreciate this change in him. But of course there's a twist. That Rick who's been bonding with the family, yeah, he's just the robot. Turns out Rick C-137 built the robot version to keep the family busy while he's underground working tirelessly to locate Rick Prime. The robot Rick gets destroyed, but Morty realizes that his grandpa actually built it to make them happy, showing a rare display of caring. Rick, too, realizes his mistake in leaving Morty out of the Rick Prime search mission and asks him to join him. He's pumped with excitement, claiming that they're closer than ever to hunting down his nemesis. And that's how Season 6 of Rick and Morty ends, leaving us with an epic cliffhanger in anticipation for what's to come in future seasons. So this is the complete timeline of Rick and Morty so far. If you enjoyed the video, drop us a like and subscribe to Cartoon Mania for more awesome tunes like this recapped on your feed. Press that bell icon too to never miss an update, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.